This is The Big Conversation on The Breakfast Show here on KBC English Service.
10 minutes into 8 in the morning. A very good morning to you. You're on The Breakfast Club on KBC English Service. My name is Ndeda.
I'm Mwihaki.
And it is time for conversation. And conversation this morning, we're talking about sexual harassment in media houses, particularly. And our guest this morning, the Acting Executive Director for the Association of Media Women in Kenya, Sharon Kechula. Very good morning to you. Happy New Month.
Happy New Month. Oh, yes.
It's February. We're done with January.
Of course,
Finally.
Yeah. Interesting. Happy New Year to you. Happy New Month to you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for making time to come to the Breakfast Club to talk to us about this very, very important issue. Now, first things, before we get into the topic of sexual harassment, two things that we want to find out from you first, Sharon. On your X profile, there's a statement driven by purpose, one humanity. And we wanted to figure out what's the inspiration behind that phrase.
I've always worked in the development sector. And for me, the act of service that we usually give there is what drives me to serve humanity as such. And I've worked with communities and I see the suffering, the atrocities that are done against our publics. And for me, basically, that is a drive to just want to keep on and push on in the industry. And also just as a person, it shapes what I think and how I do my things.
Like it. So now, tell us about the Association of Media Women in Kenya. What's it about? What's the mandates?
Yeah, so the Association of Media Women in Kenya is a membership organization for media women in Kenya that was established in 1982. So we are over 40 plus years in existence in Kenya. Yes, driving the topic on women issues and women rights, championing that throughout the years. Our mandate basically is not entirely limited to the media industry as much as we support the media fraternity, and especially just working with women to empower and amplify their voices in various aspects. We have worked with various partners to ensure that there is gender equality, and we are able to use our women because of their power and influence within the media space. And, just basically taking advantage of the media as a tool to inform, educate, and also influence and shape public opinion. So basically the mandate of the media women in Kenya cuts across amplifying women's voices and also empowering the women in Kenya.
Fantastic stuff. I love it. So now we're getting into this sexual harassment in the media space. How bad is it? On a scale of 1 to 10.
How bad is it?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, it's bad.
Bad. It's really bad.
We're looking at in 2021, a WANIFA report indicated that Kenya in Africa, compared to 8 other African countries, was leading at 56%. In sexual harassment in media.
Which 8 other countries?
The 8 other countries are Botswana,
South
Rwanda,
Africa.
Zambia, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Malawi, and Uganda.
Those are polite countries. I wanted to hear South
I
Africa,
thought South Africa
Nigeria.
Yeah. And,
But still, it's not a good thing.
Yeah,
It is not a good
And
thing.
when you say 56%,
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
Basically, we are saying, for instance, in Kenya, we are looking at in 5 out of 8 women have experienced sexual harassment and are confident to even report about it.
Oh, no. That is tough. That's quite a bit.
Because we are looking at also the fact that sexual harassment, generally, people do not like talking about it. Yes, it's very embarrassing. Yeah. So because of that, the other issues that come around with sexual harassment, it makes it impossible sometimes for even victims to come out and speak about it. So we are really talking about those who have come out and are confident enough to say, I have experienced this. So what about the numbers that we don't know?
Which brings us to a critical question, because the first thing is, what would we define? What would we define as sexual harassment?
So sexual harassment, interestingly, has been misconstrued in a way. And how am I talking about this? Sometimes, the way we socialize, we tend to be over familiarized with each other, and we cross some boundaries that we tend not to even realize that they are boundaries within sexual harassment. So in a nutshell, sexual harassment is basically sexual advances of unwanted nature. There is no consent in how you partake of the sexual activity. And it appears in various ways. It could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be verbal. It comes in various aspects. Passing sneaky comments, even the tone of how we talk about it. Some of the comments that we make to our colleagues, we don't even realize they actually pass as sexual harassment. However, because of how we are socialized as a society, we tend not to be able to differentiate some of these interactions. So it really creates a situation where people tend to ask other questions. So are we not going to socialize because this might be perceived as sexual harassment? So we really need to understand what sexual harassment and the forms of sexual harassment that may appear in especially workplaces.
And also understanding it from maybe a Kenyan perspective.
Exactly.
So what areas, in which places are this more prevalent? Is it in the offices? Is it while people are out and about collecting the stories? Where are these incidences highest?
Yeah, Angela, thank you so much for that question. We basically, the way we define workplace is any place where you go to work.
Okay.
It could be in the field. For journalists, we go out to the field to source for news, right? We go to do research outside our offices. There is also work from home. Sometimes it could not necessarily be at home,
True.
but at a different location. It is the remote working, provision for remote working. So basically, the workplace in this sense is whenever you are working, that place, is it sexual harassment free? Is it safe for you to work and prosper in what you're doing without other interferences or stresses that come as a result of sexual interference?
So this 56% was strictly within the workspace, not in the matatu, not when I'm zurureng going to the market.
In
job
media,
related. Wow.
Workplace, in media.
So is there an area where it was more prevalent? We have private companies, we have public. I don't know. What more can we find out from those statistics?
Okay, so AMWIC, Association of Media Women in Kenya, has followed up this report from WANIFRA with research to just try and establish the gaps and limitations within the industry, right? And when we talk about media houses, we're also looking at the power play that comes into it in terms of being able to air stories, the power that the media houses itself, like for instance, KBC, when I come to you with a story, are you able to just accept it as a journalist who works for the media station KBC? Are you able to publish my story without any other underlying tones, without any other favors, So basically, the power play really comes especially when we are talking about running stories, we are talking about advancing our careers, we are talking about trying to progress in the line of our journalistic career progression. We are talking about even interactions with the influences of power. So we cannot say that it actually happens more in TV or in radio. It happens across board. And unfortunately, yes, there are different shapes, especially within the media space, whereby a female journalist would be required probably to even do a catwalk before, if they're, for instance, live on TV.
Oh,
yes.
Do a catwalk so that you can get the best angle,
Yeah, we don't see the men doing that.
We don't see the men doing that.
This is true.
I hadn't
Yeah.
thought about that, yeah.
So, and then in radio stations, for instance, you're hosting me today, but then were there other favors or other requests that were unwarranted for you to host me here? Yes, those are so when it comes to where it's prevalent, really it depends and it varies. Yeah.
So there is bias in whether it is print. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Now,
do I want my story to run on the front page of the Nation newspaper? Standard digital, whatever. All those. It really is prevalent in all spaces and takes various forms and shapes.
Now, following up from your report, Sharon, this could be taken as an assumption that, of course, when it comes to sexual harassment in a media house, the women, the females, would bear most of the brunt. But there are men who are also privy to sexual harassment. Now, my question to you is, how often do you come across those, and what are their vulnerability levels? Because I want to assume that a lot of guys would not openly come up and say that I think this lady is harassing me sexually.
Yes. The statistics are quite staggering. They're sobering. And we'll go back to how our society is formed, how it is constituted. society plays a big role, especially in how we perceive certain issues and how we view women as vulnerable more compared to men.
Right.
Yeah, so within our statistics, we are looking at only 20% of men feeling comfortable to come and speak about sexual harassment, and especially when they have experienced it.
20%.
20.
Okay, I guess, well, like we said, social norms.
Social norms. You see,
How do you even start explaining? And then maybe, like you said, definition. I don't know.
And you see, when we also look at the egos, you know, we go back to our society. As a society, are we formed? You know, we are looking at how the male ego is.
Right.
Will it even allow for certain discussions to take place? Then we're also looking at women as the more vulnerable in the society. But even so, them being vulnerable does not constitute them to even reporting about their vulnerabilities, and especially sexual harassment. Yeah? So yes, there are men who face sexual harassment, but the challenge really is in terms of reporting and also just getting the men to come and speak about it, and especially male journalists. How is it seen? How is it viewed by the society? You're a celebrity. You're an influencer. What does the society think about you?
Yikes.
So, Nick, would you report?
Well, I think I have never been in that situation. I will be honest. I haven't been in that situation.
I'm just wondering if you are, would you?
Yeah, I mean, if it's making me uncomfortable in the workplace, and this is someone I have to see maybe every day, every other day, yeah, I would, and hopefully not get fired. I think the biggest fear is I will report this, and then next week I get a letter, and then I don't have a job anymore. You know, especially if it's someone like higher up.
Yes.
And that makes me wonder. I would think women would be more in cases of harassment because, unfortunately, predominantly most media institutions are run and owned by men.
Yes.
Is that the situation?
Yes, there is that, and you would imagine that, but then we also have to be cognizant of the other dynamics of how we also define genders, and not really restricting it to male and female, right? So you would be shocked and surprised to also know that this goes across board.
Oh.
Even for other gender identities, there are experiences of sexual harassment, and unfortunately this has gone without being recorded because of how, again, we perceive the other genders and identities within our society.
Out of curiosity, there was a question that was sent to us. What are some of the behaviors to look out for in the media space that definitely justify sexual harassment?
Yes, thank you so much. That is a very good question. The way we socialize within the media space is very intriguing. We spend a lot of time with our colleagues. Then we become over familiar with each other. You know, the hugs, the light touches here and there. It could be uncomfortable to a person that is witnessing that particular interaction, and especially with the manner in which you are touched, in the manner in which you are hugging, even the proximity to which you're standing next to your colleague. What does that say about sexual harassment? There are those small undertones that we don't even realize. You know, the small practices that we have engraved within our interactions, such that it is so easy for us to miss them. Yeah, it could make me uncomfortable seeing, for instance, Nick and Angela interacting in a particular manner, but they have their own level of familiarization, right? But then we also want to look at inappropriate advances where probably your boss wants to ask for sexual favors so that they can probably promote you, run a story. We're also looking at editors telling you for this story to run, you need to fulfill X, Y, and Z demands. We're looking at interns even getting an opportunity at the media space, being asked for sexual favors. We are looking at instances where we need to get a certain politician, we know who they are, and we know the type of women they might, and I'm putting it in quotes, they might have a tendency to like. And then that is where we put our vulnerable female journalists to go and source the stories. And that is the workplace. Remember the interaction with a politician, a stakeholder, a business person, and there are instances and there are situations that make our journalists be in that trap of sexual advances that warrants a sexual harassment.
Oh, if you're putting them in that position.
You're putting them in that position.
Because I always remember there was another media house where I worked in, and the moment you get there, everyone's very, like, how do you put it? the people are very friendly, like you said, like very friendly. Everyone hugs each other, even because it only looked weird the day there was a new person who came to the workplace and she didn't like being hugged. And then that's when everyone was like, oh, that's strange. We didn't think that, because there's this idea that in the media, because people in the media are quote unquote confident people, public speaker, they're always just very
easy or
easy
relaxed,
going. There you go.
easy going.
Yeah, so you walk into the workspace as an intern, for example, and if you're seeing Nick and Angie hugging, Grace and Philip holding hands, that random holding hands that you start swinging like your childhood love. I hate it. Yeah, so like when you come into this space as an intern, how do you navigate through that?
Yeah. Through the reports that we are going to launch next week on Monday in Nairobi, and on Friday in Kisumu, we are basically advocating for media houses to institutionalize sexual harassment policies. Unfortunately, you'd be surprised that most of even the colleagues who work within these spaces do not understand what a sexual harassment policy is. One, that basically protects everyone, the interns, even other stakeholders that you work with, your partners, the colleagues who are in the newsrooms. We are also looking at trainings on sexual harassment. We want our employees to understand the forms that which sexual harassment can take, to know and be able to differentiate, because we don't also want people to over legislate around it, and then we start faulting the society for certain behaviors that might arise out of it. So basically making sure that we have policies in place to protect the interns, and also making sure that we also have a whistleblower policy. How can we also just report this, the reporting mechanisms, make sure we empower our HRs to understand and identify such forms of sexual harassment, allowed and disallowed behaviors within the workplace, and also make sure that the interns are also equipped with this information. At times they are not. Remember, they are fresh from school, they don't understand some of these things, they're trying to get experience within the media space, and then they also want to progress. And they would imagine this is how people progress, but this is not the norm. There is a professional way of handling ourselves. How do we also tie ourselves in with the professional code of conduct? Those are some of the things that we really need to make sure that are out there for each and every person to know and understand. Yeah.
So sadly, according to the very same report, 70% of respondents know their perpetrators, but they seem to go unpunished despite legal provisions. So there seem to be significant gaps. So how can this be handled, and who is to blame for this?
Unfortunately, we cannot really start victim shaming. We cannot start blaming. We can only take responsibility for the broken system.
Yes.
And this basically goes again back to the power play that I was talking about. I'm an intern, I want to progress, and I need this story to run. It's a big story. I need to have very good working relationship with my colleagues. They're requesting me for sexual advances. I might give in, I might not. When I do not, I am dimming my shine, right? But if I have to progress, then what does it also mean for me? It means that I give in to sexual harassment, for me to progress. Unfortunately, the one thing that most of us do not even want to probably talk about is the fact that influence also comes into play. And most of the people at the management position have the capacity to make sure that sexual harassment is not entertained or tolerated in media space. The kind of instances that you are getting were, for instance, I have a good story, I want it to run, but I'm not able to get a space because I did not give in to the advances of my editor.
Oh, wow.
Or I do not have a good working relationship with my boss because of XYZ. We went to for some field work. I was not able to give in to their advances and such kind of things. The other one that we are not also realizing is that it can also happen the other way around, where the junior employees want promotion and they are very confident enough to even come and approach you with sexual advances just so they can grow. We really need to recognize all these forms that it takes and why we are not really being able to push this agenda as a very serious issue within the media houses.
I mean, I know I heard a story of of a very sad story of an intern who the security guard, like the first person you see when you're
When
walking
you get
in,
into the complex,
wanted her phone number. She said no, and from that day, that girl had hell coming to work. Like sometimes he would block her from coming into the gate, come up with some flimsy excuse.
Power play.
Yes.
Influence.
Which makes us wonder, like, now, what's the major hurdle, especially according to your findings, the major hurdle that comes in addressing sexual harassment in the media workplace? Because she didn't even mention that to anyone for a while.
Yeah.
She only mentioned it when her internship was ending, that situation happened like 3 months later.
Yeah. So one, we are talking about the reporting mechanisms. We're also talking about these institutional policies around sexual harassment that are supposed to be there. We're also talking about the HR being aware of these issues. Unfortunately, because also sexual harassment, the way it manifests itself, there is a bit where the victim is embarrassed to even talk about it. So many a times, trying to implement, some of these things and also make sure that the perpetrators are brought to books is difficult. Also, the proof, because it happens instantaneously.
Yeah.
And in private, most
and in
cases.
private sometimes, I'm interacting with Angela and, probably I make some sneaky comments towards you, you're uncomfortable, you view it as sexual harassment, but then you don't have evidence. It's my word against yours. Yeah? So there is that. There is also the lack of just even people speaking out about the issue, even in the open, just having general conversations. It might not be a point of reference to say, so and so made me feel in a certain manner. Whenever they did something, it made me feel sexually harassed. We do not have those open conversations because they are a way of fostering, safe spaces for us to be able to bring out the perpetrators, talk about them. But unfortunately, within the media space, we know who these perpetrators are.
That's what I was going to say. Sometimes you will hear, like the example given of the intern, that a couple of them will open up and say, yeah, that happened to me. That happened to me. So it's almost like a well-known secret.
Yes.
Who the perpetrators are.
Yes. So now this takes me to the second part of the research, which is now the media capture bit of it. You have this person in influence harassing the juniors. We know that they are the harassers.
Yeah.
We cannot talk to them about it. We cannot take them anywhere because they are big money, cash money for our stations, for our business. So the viability of media is also at risk. We are allowing ourselves to be captured within. And whenever we talk about media capture, we always think about the governments, the businesses. Yeah. But then this is media capture happening within our stations, within our media houses, within our newsrooms. How do we then bring those to books?
That's a good question.
So collaborative efforts are ongoing. The Association of Media Women in Kenya, under the Kenya Media Sector Working Group, is working with media houses in Kenya to sensitize them on sexual harassment trainings. We have even worked with KBC on training some of their employees on sexual harassment, and I'm glad that some of these news stations, media houses, have also adopted the sexual harassment policy. It is not enough to adopt the policy. Train your staff on the contents of the policy. Have the reporting mechanisms put out for everybody to know about them, because those are some of the gaps that we are not able to do even within. As much as we sensitize you on sexual harassment, we give you the policies, you have them, they are very nice documents to have, but if they are not implemented to the full effect, then we really are losing on this fight.
So how can we get to a point where we can ensure that they are implemented?
Yeah, there is the goodwill and the buy-in from the media houses. You will realize that even the struggles that legacy media had in terms of sexual harassment and what we're having right now, they're also changing. The modes in which sexual harassment is presenting itself is also changing. So we really need to be cognizant of the changes that are happening even within our workspaces in terms of sexual harassment. But even more so, what we are also advocating for is the constant sensitization of sexual harassment, the policies that are in place, and also linking them up to the Constitution, the Employment Act, what What does this say? When it comes to discrimination against somebody, when it comes to employment, just because they did not give in to your sexual advances, what does that mean? You know, are we able to also follow the extent of the law to its entirety? Are we able to make sure that each and every person involved in this ecosystem understands the reporting mechanisms, the legal frameworks that are around them, and how their employers are protecting them, and especially acting on the issues that have been reported on the perpetrators that we all know?
Now, if because a lot of males attribute women's sexual harassment to women's personal behaviors, curious, is there a contrasting opinion from women, especially from Amwick's point of view?
Yes, most definitely. In 2021, Amwick did a documentary on sexual harassment in media houses again. And this is just part of the ongoing work that we've been doing over the years. And surprisingly enough, we have a staggering number, 46%, sorry, not 46%, 87% of the respondents identified fear of victimization. Why? Because when they report, what do the other people say? And especially in regard to your question, the men say,
What did you do?
What did you do?
What were you wearing?
What were you wearing? Were you being respectful to that person? Why didn't you give in to their advances? As though I don't have the will to speak about my feelings, to talk about the people I want within this, feeling safe, in a very safe environment, and express my romantic feelings to the people that I want to associate myself with. Yeah? So there is that victimization of women, and especially in regard to how they dress, how they talk, how they carry themselves. Again, we go back to how the society views sexual harassment. How are we cultured to deal with issues of sexual harassment? Yeah.
And it definitely has an impact. It would have an impact on your performance.
Yes.
Definitely. So, is there any example that you can give, maybe that you found from your report, that showcases how sexual harassment directly impacted the performance of someone in the media fraternity?
Yes. During our conversations when we were conducting this report, we started this report last year in June. The research, not June, sorry, in August. That is when the research was conducted. And during that time, we really had quite a number of conversations, open conversations. And one of the interesting facts was one of the journalists came forward and said, you know what, I used to run this column. I know you have not seen it in a long while, and these are the reasons. It's because I was sexually harassed. I tried to pursue the case and seek legal, pursue the legal mechanisms that were in place, but nothing really happened. It continued to happen even after I reported. So what did I decide to do? I decided to stop writing altogether.
Wow.
This is somebody who used to write a very popular column within our dailies. They had quite good insights about the topical issues that they were raising, but this is somebody's career we are killing, the career progression. And even if you look at it from the larger perspective, in terms of business, what does it mean? It could be a 0.00 whatever that you're losing, but that is the market that you're actually losing in terms of your viewership and your audiences when it comes to business. So linking media capture and mental and psychosocial support, really we need to understand when we are not providing psychosocial support to our journalists, especially female journalists, what does it mean? We are also at the verge of compromising the quality of stories that we are reporting. We want impactful stories. We don't just want to run stories. We want stories that will bring change, stories that would influence policies, stories that will trigger discussions, national debates. But then we are at the expense of losing that just because of the vices that are happening within our newsrooms. And we are not bold enough to really speak about them.
So in the same instance, can we look at some of the challenges entry-level journalists are experiencing as they're trying to break into this career? What are some of the things that they face and maybe offer solutions?
Yeah. So as part of the active work again that the Association of Media Women is doing, we are getting into tertiary institutions with media which have media school, and talking to the students directly, we have to start these conversations early.
Yes.
What do you expect when you come out of school? These are the realities at the workplace. Yes, but then how are we also navigating that? We are also trying to empower them in terms of understanding that there are legal mechanisms in place, put in place, and this is your right. You need to know this and understand it. When you're also signing the contracts, make sure that you're bound by something, because unfortunately, most of the interns, when they come from school, sometimes I'm looking for a gig. I'll get a gig and then, whatever, let's do this because I'm going to get a few shillings. But we really don't have any contractual obligation binding you between your employer and yourself. So when it comes to issues of sexual harassment, it is easy, and even other vices, it is so easy for the interns to be left on their own. So making sure that they understand some of these things. And also at the workplace, we encourage some of the organizations that we've worked with, we encourage them to have the sexual harassment policy plastered on the wall where everybody can see. These are allowed behaviors. These are not allowed behaviors. What are we looking at in terms of the instances that we do not expect to tolerate within the workspace? Let the junior employees know and understand. Just because of the power play effect that happens and how much influence sexual harassment has, unfortunately, on them.
So, for example, like here in KBC, all staff must read, understand, and commit to terms and conditions of a document called Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Commitment Form. So this has now become a policy for us here. We're wondering, is it also effective in other media houses?
Yes. I would say yes and no.
Okay.
And largely it's because of the implementation. As a country, we suffer from very nice policies, very good legislations, but even the understanding, how do we create awareness within our spaces such that all our employees are on the same page? They understand. So at the point of employment, when you are recruiting a new staff, do you ensure that they are made, like for instance what KBC is doing, are you able to make them sign things that they actually understand, documents that they understand, not to be forced? We have these timelines, we need to sign this at this point, giving people adequate time to understand that, organizing for, this is not a one-off thing. You have to be very deliberate and intentional about the awareness creation, how you are going to constantly train your staff about this and make them aware, despite the fact that you had made them sign. So this has to be adopted by all media stations, media houses, for us to be able to fight sexual harassment within the media space and offer psychosocial support. That one is lacking, because at times you'll find victims not able to report directly probably to the HR or the provided mechanisms, but they're able to seek psychosocial support. And through that, given that it could be a HR issue, then at the, at the, what is it called? At the mercy of the counselor, they're able then to see if these are issues guided by their ethics again, that they can also raise with the HR. Is it something that they're able to even report in a manner that does not victimize the victim further, and bring to the attention of the management and the HR within the workspace?
So going back, let's say from 2023, dating back, would you say that the policies that have been in existence as far as curbing sexual harassment are concerned in this country, in the media space especially, the lack thereof very structured policies has actually contributed to the number of sexual harassment cases? Yes, there is that, but then again, it goes back to the will of the management. Those in power. All right. Those with influence. How are they implementing it? The buck stops with them. Are we only keeping Angela because she brings us money, or are we really interested in curbing sexual harassment? We might have the policies, we might have the sensitizations happening, but also we need to make sure that we give confidence to the systems in such a manner that I know if I want to report an issue on sexual harassment, it would be addressed. And that goes back to the will within the management. Yeah. So it is the management that backstops them on that one. Exactly. Which can be a challenge, I think, because how do you then enforce? Because it's like you said, Kenya's known for the best policies. Everything in writing, we have written it all out. But if it's not enforceable,
Yeah.
What happens then? Like, even if you're, like, let's say for your members, you have lots of, Amwik is about protecting women journalists. What about those who are institutions where the policies may be there, but the goodwill is not there? How are you able to maybe intervene to help make a change?
Yeah. So I will talk about what the regulatory body for the media is, the Media Council of Kenya.
Yes.
We are working with them to make sure that, I feel unsafe, I feel unprotected, I feel victimized within my working space. What can I do? There is a mechanism that you can go through through the Media Council of Kenya to report such vices, for them to investigate and take further action. And again, this goes now back to individual responsibility. Are we also able to go through that? And then, unfortunately, we have found that even the processes that are available sometimes are lengthy and tedious. So we tend to give up midway. We tend to forget about that other alternatives that we can seek redress. We also are keen to not link this to the Constitution. We are not keen to also look at the Sexual Offences Act in Kenya. How can we go about this? Using the police. How do we then also work with the police to identify their areas of intervention that they can actually come in and support people who do not feel comfortable raising issues of sexual harassment within their workplaces? How can they support them? Making sure that the investigative frameworks that are available protect the victim. But unfortunately, currently, the way they are, it makes you feel more oppressed. Yes? So where's the evidence? You have to relive the very horrifying experience. You have to over and over again subject yourself to embarrassment, even just reporting that to other parties. So basically strengthening these institutions, working together, making sure that we are here to support each other and complement each other's efforts. So if I'm not able to report within my news station, my media house, I should be able to go to the Media Council to seek redress.
We want to play you a clip, but just before we play this, because you mentioned evidence, and then I remembered I don't know whether this is a true story, but there was a story about a lady who worked in a media house somewhere in Kenya, and was constantly harassed by her boss. So she told a supervisor, and the supervisors obviously trashed it, and another employee told her, he does that all the time. Trust me, it won't go. No one's going to believe you. It won't go. It won't go anywhere. So she started doing this thing where, whenever the guy would call her to his office, she would put the recorder on her phone, and then just be standing there. And when he says things like, "Why do you say this?" Would you advocate for someone to do something like that
for evidence?
Yeah.
For evidence collection. Now, there is another tricky part that comes with that. Data Protection Act. So we really we cannot talk about sexual harassment in as a single issue
in isolation.
We cannot oversimplify it. We really have to look at also other ways and if you feel unsafe, I would, for instance, I would personally request to go with somebody in that room if I feel unsafe, because I will record you against your wish, and then when I go to the courts, probably
consent was not obtained.
Exactly. Did I even consent to that recording? Did I even know that it was happening in the first place? So there are other challenges, and then the legislations that are around even how we give evidence, how evidence is used. Yes. So in such instances, and unfortunately, again, this goes back to the people who feel they have been sexually harassed. We encourage them to come out boldly, even use proxies. Somebody they trust, to air their grievances and express their concerns, engaging with, and especially if it's within a workspace, engaging with other colleagues. Because you need to interact with your colleagues on a regular basis, but then you also need to feel safe and comfortable while at it. So how do you go about it? Look for a trusted person, air it with them, let them know that these are your concerns dealing with X and Y person.
Fair enough. Okay.
It is quite a challenge because sometimes you cannot predict when it will happen,
exactly,
or how it will happen.
Yeah.
And like you said, it can happen at any moment.
Exactly.
So it's truly quite a daunting challenge there.
It is. Our production team, led by Charity Maloba and Andrew Masika, went out and asked members of the public on a couple of the intervention measures when it comes to sexual harassment. And this is what they brought back.
My name is Matthew Mabosho. Media houses can implement comprehensive training programs to educate staff about sexual harassment and appropriate behavior.
I'm Rehema. I think a website should be created so that anyone who feels offended can submit their report without being called out for reporting another person.
My name is Eugene. The administration should create awareness on how everyone should learn to accommodate each other and be brothers and sisters keeper.
I think the media house should take proactive steps, providing safe reporting channels and ensuring safety for the person who has been harassed.
I'm John Wayne. It's important for media organization to foster a culture of respect and equality where everyone feels valued and protected.
Thank you very much to Charity Maloba and Andrew Masika going out to get words on that. What did you pick from that? Any that stood out for you?
Yeah, I like that we already also know the solutions that we want in place. Yeah, and it goes back to us as implementers of, championing issues around sexual harassment, advocating for, equality within the workspaces. What is it that we're not really doing? That is the question that we should also be asking ourselves. And for instance, for somebody to even comment about the website, that is really remarkable.
Yeah.
These are opportunities that, yes, I feel I have been sexually harassed. I don't trust the system within, but I want to be able to speak about this. The numbers will go high in terms of reporting, and we'll be able to recognize this as a matter of urgency in terms of how to even protect our journalists against. So, and I like the fact that people are also talking about trainings. They are aware there are different forms of sexual harassment, but we really need to know what are these. We need a training on it, understanding what it is. Even sometimes, even ourselves, without knowing, engage in sexual harassment vices. But because of how we are socialized, we don't even recognize it. Yeah, so it is good that some of the respondents gave that as a way forward. Also, just making sure there is awareness creation, making sure that everybody is on the same page in light to the policies, the challenges that are also in existence in terms of implementing a such policy. The reporting, this is where we are having a challenge because of victimization. And then somebody spoke about the respect. Victimization and respect, how do they go hand in hand? I would like to report, but then after reporting, and especially for females, you are stigmatized.
True.
There is stigmatization. People look at you as, oh, wewe ndo ule mtiaji. Yes, you are the one who is causing us trouble here.
Yeah.
We cannot do our things in peace. So you really need to ensure that there is respect fostered among colleagues, how to relate, and sometimes just probably talking about issues around respect and interactions within the workspace, not necessarily sexual harassment, because that will now come in play. Respectfully engage with me, ethically interact with me at the office, and we'll make sure that we do not have issues of sexual harassment within our workplaces.
Indeed. Yusuf sent us a message on X and says that you're very, very informed, and he's learning a lot.
That's good.
Which is great. And I really like the point about that you said that sometimes some people are just not knowledgeable of the fact that what they're doing constitutes sexual harassment, and it's all because of socialization, like you said. But then we live in the age of information, so let us kindly not be the people who say I didn't know.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we let you go, Sharon, we definitely want to get your parting shot when it comes to how to conduct ourselves, and even over above outside of the media space, just in the workplace, because we live in the age of work wives and work husbands, and people will tend to not see where they're crossing the line. So what's your word to share on that?
Yeah, one, as I had mentioned, respect. Respect me in a manner that does not have buts. Just give me respect. It doesn't matter whether I'm your junior or your senior. Respect for everybody, mutual respect, at the workplaces. We're also looking at ethical considerations within our workplaces, making sure that we all know what is ethical within the workspace, how to interact. There are simple things that we take for granted in terms of interacting professionally. What does that mean? What does it look like? Is it an area that I would want to capacity build my staff even on? Dealing with issues that we say go back to how we are socialized as a society. Then we have to, is it desocialize or unlearn?
Unlearn to relearn.
Unlearn to relearn.
Yes.
We unlearn to relearn that this is not acceptable at the workplace and even in our other interactions. And always, at all times, make sure that whatever we do, it is consensual. There needs to be consent, because one of the issues, the biggest challenges with sexual harassment is the fact that there is a lack of consent when it is happening. I don't appreciate the advances. So let's make sure that whatever it is that we are doing within our workplaces is consensual and the other person feels comfortable, and I'm not making my colleagues uncomfortable with how I interact with them. Yeah.
Well said. Acting Executive Director of the Association of Media Women in Kenya, AMWIC, Sharon John Kechula, thank you so much for coming this morning and enlightening us. Definitely, I am definitely enlightened.
Things differently.
Yeah, exactly. Keep up the good work that you're doing, and we wish you a fantastic day and month, actually.
Thank you.
This is The Big Conversation on The Breakfast Show here on KBC English Service.